But another big thing that was released finally was the official UFL rules. Of course, with the combination of both the United States Football League, the USFL, and the Extreme Football League, XFL, combining, there were kind of two sets of rules. And that was one thing that was super interesting to kind of think about, is how are they going to combine them? Which ones are they going to go with? And we're going to break them down for you on tonight's show. And so one of the things that was talked about and that was different in both leagues was the points that came after the touchdown. Now, in the USFL, they just kind of did what the NFL did in terms of extra points, just kicking it, or the potential of going for a 2-point conversion. The XFL actually initiated a new form of kind of points after the touchdown. And after a team scored, they would have the ability to go for 1, 2, or 3 points on a successful try. And so there was no kicking. The kicker's not involved anymore. The offense stays on the field after they score a touchdown. And if the offense can convert from the 2-yard line into the end zone, that would be 1 point. From the 5-yard line, it would be 2 points. And from the 10-yard line, they could earn a possibility of 3 points on a successful try. And so the new league, the UFL, is going to be instituting that version, the latter version, after points after touchdown. So there will no longer be extra point attempts after the touchdowns are scored. It's going to be the XFL format, with teams going for 1, 2, or 3 points from the 2, 5, and 10-yard line. So super interesting. What do you think about that, Rob? Do you like that they kept this rule? Are you upset that they got rid of the kicking point of it?
I think that's so exciting. I think kicking plays are the most boring things in the entire NFL most of the time, unless it's like, you need a game-winning field goal or whatever. So it's really exciting to me that now we get to watch them run offensive plays instead of getting, kicking an extra point. And also the ability to score 9 points on a touchdown and, make more games 1-score games as opposed to 2-score games. That's also incredibly exciting. And I love that rule change. And I hope the NFL adopts it someday. Another rule that they will be keeping from the XFL that I hope the NFL adopts someday is the ability to, instead of kicking an onside kick, to convert a 4th and 12 to retain possession of the football. That was a rule the XFL introduced last year, and I think it makes games a lot more exciting because I think you have a higher chance of converting a 4th and 12 than you do of recovering an onside kick, which is almost impossible in the NFL nowadays because of their new kickoff rules. So I am very excited to see that be carried over to the UFL from the XFL, and I hope the NFL will implement it someday. How about you, Carson? Do you also excited about the extra point rules and the onside conversion rule?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty sure the onside kick rule came from the USFL.
Oh,
Um,
great. I mixed it up.
if if I'm not mistaken. But absolutely, I'm glad you brought that up, because the points after touchdown I loved from the XFL. I loved, as you mentioned, keeping games 1-score games, the ability to score 9 points. Those 3-point tries were not as successful as some of the others, but still that option, keeping games close. I loved that they kept that from the XFL. And on the vice versa side, I love that they kept this onside kick slash rule when it came to the 4th and 12 from their own 28-yard line. That was something I loved from the USFL. I don't think they did in the XFL. I could be wrong. They may have done it in both.
Oh, they did
But
it.
I remember they
I
didn't do
was,
the
I, was-
XFL. Okay.
I mixed it up.
But I just remember watching in the USFL the ability for these teams going for it on 4th and 12. And of course, that opens up a whole level of playability in terms of, it's the fourth quarter, we're down by so many points. The likelihood of getting an onside kick and keeping the ball with your offense, it has decreased over the past number of years with additional rules the NFL have brought in and whatnot. And so this opens up so much more potential, for teams to come back, teams to tie it up, things like that. But additionally, it forces teams winning to have good defenses. because otherwise they're going to be able to keep going for it on 4th and 12 in the fourth quarter, and you're going to be forced to step up. So I love this rule. I'm so glad that they incorporated not only the points after the touchdown from the XFL, but the USFL 4th and 12 from the 28 instead of going for an onside kick. Absolutely love those
I
additions.
remember correctly, aren't there certain conditions that have to be in place in order for you to actually use that rule? I think you have to be like trailing and it has to be inside
Yes.
2 minute warning, right? If I'm remembering it correctly. Or
I
like
think
is
it's
it a
only
certain amount?
fourth quarter. I think it's
Only
in the fourth quarter
okay.
trailing the fourth quarter. Yes.
Gotcha.
So yeah, if the team is like tied or behind during the fourth quarter, they can retain possession
Okay.
with a 4th and 12. So yeah, there is some rules. They can't just like, oh, first quarter, you're not getting the ball. Just yeah, no, no, no. You can't do that. But it will make the games more interesting when it comes down to the final quarter. But I'm so stoked. That was my two worries, that they were going to get rid of one of the other rules in regards to the points after touchdown and the 4th and 12, keeping the possession. Those two, I'm so glad they added. One thing I'm also happy about is that they're going to be keeping the kickoff rules from the USFL. The XFL was this weird kind of, I hated it. I thought it was awful. I didn't like it. I know that it was supposed to
Terrible.
promote player safety. It was garbage. It was so boring to watch. You had everyone lined up besides the kicker and the receiver, and the kicker kicked it, and no one could move until the guy touched the ball, and then everyone could move. It was the worst thing. I absolutely hated it. I'm so glad that it's going to be normal kickoffs that we kind of see in the NFL, that they used in the USFL. Going to be normal in that regard. And I think I'm absolutely happy that they're keeping that rule, because the old kickoff was just so bad.
Britain football has messed up a lot of things, but they really nailed the rules here. I feel like they kept everything they should have and they got rid of everything they should have. So I'm very excited to see the new rule set.
Absolutely. And the last thing I will say, well, there's two more things I want to touch on. One is the catch definition. And I'm glad that they're going back to, well, this is kind of a USFL rule, that the XFL only had the 1 foot rule in bounds would constitute a catch. The USFL, if I'm not mistook, the USFL had the 2 foot in rule for a catch. I'm glad that they finally decided to nix the 1 foot rule that they have in college. And they're going to go back to the 2 foot inbounds rule. I just think that's going to make play so much more competitive. And not only that, but it's going to allow um, the UFL to be on kind of the same stage in terms of players catching passes as the NFL, which sets them so much closer with, like, okay, these players have the ability to prove themselves in this league, and they can play in the NFL if given a chance. So I love that they are finally added that catch definition of 2 feet in bounds, or any part of the body other than the hands in bounds. I'm glad they kept that rule.
It
And the
definitely.
coach challenge rule is the last rule I love. So
Yeah. The coach challenge rule is great, and I fully agree with you about the 2 feet inbounds. It keeps it feeling like it's a competitive and tough football league, and it's not just like, oh yeah, like a worse version of college football or something like that. Like it feels so much more adult, I guess you could say, or competitive, tough, having the
yeah,
2 feet rule instead.
professional.
There is one other rule I wanted to touch on, and that was the two forward pass rule, which I think was implemented by the USFL originally, if I recall correctly.
I believe so. Yes.
So that means as long as the ball does not pass the line of scrimmage, you're allowed to throw it forward twice, which is not allowed in the NFL and will allow for some very exciting trick plays. And we saw it a few times in the USFL over the past couple of years, and it was pretty cool to see. So hopefully that gets used at least a little bit in the UFL because those are some of the best trick plays I've ever seen.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love that they also are going to be including, I know both leagues did this, but coaching, being able to challenge any ruling on the field, whether it's not just contained like the NFL to just like the result of a play. They can actually, challenge fouls and potential fouls that weren't called. But of course, there is only, you only have pretty much one challenge per game if you are incorrect, if you win the challenge, then you can keep the challenge. The same thing that they kind of promote in the NFL. But I love the rule that they can, coaches can challenge rulings, including like the fouls and the potential fouls. And I would love to see this rule in the NFL. I think this would fix a lot of officiating, some of those calls that people think are like, oh, game changing. I know one of the bigger ones was not this past Super Bowl, but 2 Super Bowls ago when it was the Eagles and the Chiefs. And you had that James Bradbury pass interference call that gave the Chiefs pretty much the ability to be in the red zone. And that's how they won the game. A lot of people like to contest that one, even though I think it was holding. It was rightfully holding, pass interference. But anyways, it doesn't matter. The point is the ability to kind of be able to challenge a play like that if you think it's unfair or whatnot. I love that ability is. And I think the last thing that we have to touch on in terms of these new rules is the overtime rules, which is super, super unique. And it's not like college football. It is not like the NFL. It is super unique in that basically it will consist of alternating attempts from the opponent's 5-yard line. So excluding kicks. So teams basically will go back and forth in a best of 3 format to basically determine who's going to be the winner. And I believe each of those completed conversions or correct conversions will earn that team 2 points. I believe that's what they're going to be carrying over from that. But regardless, they're going to basically be going back and forth. One team will have an ability, the offense-wise will have the ability to get into the end zone. If they do, then the other team does, and it'll be kind of a best of 3. And of course, if it's tied after that, it'll go back and forth until there is a winner. But that I think is something that's super unique that the Spring League is going to be bringing back, because I know that they did that in the USFL. I'm not entirely sure if they did that in the XFL. I don't remember many games in the XFL going into overtime. I could be wrong about that, but I know the USFL games that did, they used this format, and it was super exciting because not only do you get to see more offensive production, but you get to see, some well-designed plays for within the red zone from the opponent's, 5-yard line going towards the end zone. So pretty cool stuff. I don't know how much I would like to see this rule in the NFL, but regardless, I do like this rule in the US and the UFL. And I'm really super excited to see the overtime rules implemented this upcoming season.
Yeah, for sure. It's super exciting in overtime when, the team is already on the 5-yard line and all they got to do is get it in there and then the other team has to match it. I think is much better content than, starting out with a kickoff and then driving down the field and all that sort of stuff. It's pretty similar to what college football does after the first 2 possessions of overtime that both teams score.
Yeah.
It's a great format. It's a lot of fun to watch. And I'm definitely very happy that they kept this overtime format. I agree with you. I don't think I'd want to see it in the NFL. But for spring football, it'll definitely make things more exciting if games go into overtime.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a couple other rules that we're not touching on, but those are kind of the big highlights in terms of what this new league was going to do in terms of consolidating the rules that each league had different. And I think they did. They really hit the nail on the head with this one. And that's what I love to see. I love the point after touchdowns. I love that. I love the 4th and 12 instead of the onside kick. They brought the overtime back in, added the 2 feet rule. Those things, I'm so glad that they did. It's just like they took the best of both leagues in terms of the ruling and they added it together. And I'm glad it doesn't seem like to me heavy on one league or the other when they join together. So I'm glad they incorporated ideas and play styles from each. Thank you for joining us on the Redzone Rodeo podcast.
If you like football and you like having fun, come on down and subscribe. Check out our channel for more videos like this one.
No ifs, ands, or buts. This is the best place for your football news.